It's time. Rearranging mainframe. Entering mainframe. Accessing. Shall we begin? We have accessed 31 files. We were able to get beyond the firewall and access 31 freak files of real scary stories. Real. Title: Sussy Imposter in the Garden. Wait. Sorry, it's a jam. Ooh. Damn. Let's continue. Okay. So I am the family watchdog. When I lived at home, I was on the second floor and had a window that looked out over the street/driveway. PTSD made me a very light sleeper, and so even stupid shit like cats digging in our garden would have me looking outside. Anyway, at 11 p.m., I hear rapid footsteps, and naturally my traumatized ass is like, oh shit, I'm about to die. In Minecraft. So I scurry to the window, look out, and see a gentleman, except he is not gentle and barely a man. This guy had the cargo short and black zip-up hoodie combo, which just screams divorced dad. Damn. Anyway, this man is sprinting down my driveway, and he is not bothered by the security lights turning on. I'm still for a moment to analyze the situation and make sure I've gotten all of his features memorized, but my phone is in my hand. And this menace skids to a stop and turns to our garden. He crouches down, really showing off his plumber's crack in between his pale ass cheeks, and starts ripping up plants from our garden. Now, if you've ever had a Walter White moment, you will know that certain species of poppies contain latex in their seeds that can be refined into opium or opium-derived products. That is very true. If you eat if you eat a poppy seed muffin, you can test positive for opium on a drug test. By the way, you get like fuck all opium from those poppies because you need a metric fuck ton in order to really get a good old buzz going. We have some poppies because they look... My faithful assistant has detected an alarm within the system. Chat, you need to hack the mainframe. We're being attacked. Hey. Shush. Hey, come here. He gets upset at the slightest chance of a hack, sorry. Hey! Get a load of this guy. Hey. Silly guy. I'm gonna need some absolute hacking in the chat. That's a very quick counter hack. We haven't had a counter hack happen that quickly in quite some time. Okay. Where were we? We have some of these poppies because they look pretty and my parents are more into alcoholism than opiates, so we're all good. But yeah, this fellow was ripping up our garden, pulling out these plants by the fistful. At this point, I'm like, oh fuck, and skedaddle downstairs to my parents, and I'm like, yeah, there's this guy stealing from our garden. I have never seen my mom move faster. Both mom and dad spring from the bed like granddad fuckface and Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. All three of us, I don't even know what that word means. I'm guessing it means run out the door. Run out the side door, and as we rip open the door, the man starts sprinting back down our driveway. Because we're whiter than cum? My mom unironically yells, "Stop, thief." He doesn't stop, and all three of us are in our PJs, and we watch him tumble into a shitbox Supreme car, which rips it down the street. We're all like, what the fuck was that? And then we notice a second car. My brother gets out because he's just been on the piss with his mate. This is a British person. I am upset. Nobody told me British people would be in the database. They've been parked outside trying to sober up, impossible for my fam. And they also witnessed the whole debacle. So yeah, Sussy Imposter, mega sus ass cheeks out in the garden stealing our drug plants, which aren't even good for drugs. Also, this is not the first time I've been the only person to notice that we are being robbed. SMH. You'd think people would have committed crimes against me would be better than spotting other criminals. It is true. It takes a long time it takes a lot of poppies to make opium. Next entry. Strange man sees spirits and insists that I can too. This happened years ago, so a lot of this is based on a foggy memory. I haven't had any experience with anything else paranormal or very weird by any definition. This is by far the strangest thing that has ever happened to me. I used to hang out in this old graveyard stationed out in the back of this small church a lot. It sat downhill of my grandparents' house, separated from their property by a rugged stone brick wall. Much like the church, and the graveyard was also very small, maybe the only couple 100 feet in length and width. And the only easy way to get out was through the little playground that prevented that wall from fully circling the perimeter. Who decided to put a playground next to a graveyard? I have no idea. But of course, this was a big attraction for me as a kid, who would run off during visits to my grandparents. One afternoon, I was maybe 14 at the time. I was sitting at the far end of the wall where a stone laid... Huh? Hold on, my wife's leaving. Anyway. One afternoon, I was maybe 14 at the time. I was sitting at the far end of the wall where the stone laid flat and was comfortable to sit on. There's a family of groundhogs holed up at the base of the wall, and I had planned to sit and wait in silence until the little critters felt comfortable enough to hobble out of their home. As my eyes were set ahead of me, watching the cars on the distant road pass by, my attention was suddenly diverted by the sound. What? AMZ is asking for me? Why? Check Discord. All they tagged me, sent an image of me right now, and then this. Fucked up. Where were we? Everybody, you're ruining the database. They're gonna kick us out of the database, and we're not gonna be able to get through all these files. You fucks. My attention was suddenly diverted by the sound of slow footsteps off to my left. I turned my head and to the sound and see a man walking towards me from the playground. He was a very lanky, tall man, skinny at his age, maybe in his 60s. He wore a boxy black sunglasses that sat harsh against his pale skin and long, unkempt white hair. He had a strange presence about him, one that made my head feel fuzzy once I laid my eyes on him. In fact, I doubted his very existence had I been the only one to see him. He slowly made his way over to me, neither of us breaking eye contact, before he spoke in this meek, breathy voice. "It's a wonderful day today, is it not?" he said to me, folding his hands. "It really is. That's why I'm out here," I responded, with little worry for the concept of stranger danger. There was something strange yet unthreatening about him that compelled me to speak with him. "It really is indeed, you know. You and I were the lucky ones," he told me as a snaggletooth smile that reminded me of piano keys stretched across his face. I squinted my eyes in confusion. Lucky ones? I noticed then he was very fidgety, messing with something in the pocket of his shirt and constantly unbuttoning and rebuttoning the cuffs of his sleeves. Yes. The lucky ones. We see the things the others do not. I recognize ones like me when I see them. You see them too, do you not? In any other situation, I'd have been overwhelmed with discomfort and sought to leave. But he had this compelling aura to him that instilled this feeling of security. "See what?" I asked him as he began to slowly pace around the grass, brushing his skinny fingers along the curves of the graves. He rested a hand on one of the graves, and I looked down at it. The wrinkles on his face suggested an expression that was concealed by his glasses. "The energies. You see and feel the energies. Isn't that why you're waiting for the groundhogs?" I flinched in a little surprise, wondering how he'd known about the groundhogs. Then again, maybe he'd recognize the holes in the ground. That's what I was about to say. "I'm sorry, I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. My grandfather told me about the groundhogs. They keep eating my grandmother's garden. He's been trying to capture them for weeks." He removed his hand from the grave and turned to me again. "Maybe you don't recognize it yet, but we're both drawn here for a reason." He paused then, freezing so still that he appeared out of place among the swaying grass. "Do you know of the ducky race happening in doxing myself?" This is when I started to snap out of the trance-like state and the reality of the situation dawns on me. I'm a 14-year-old girl alone in a graveyard speaking to a strange old man. No, I haven't. I'm actually not from here. I'm visiting family out of state." I lied through my teeth, hoping he buys my bullshit. He obviously doesn't, as he huffs a small, airy laugh and smirks, but then he goes along with it anyway. "I see. Well, you should stop by. They have an event where they race these rubber duckies. Maybe we'll meet there." I smile uncomfortably and go to respond, but before I can speak again. "Oh, and sorry about your cat. She lies with you, waiting for those rodents." I feel my heart sink into my stomach as he chuckles. Once a cat, always a cat, I suppose. My cat Patches had died years before. This was not something I had discussed recently or brought up that day at my grandparents' house. Huh? What? I speak in almost a whisper, feeling shaken over his knowledge of this personal information. I get no response, as just then I see Dad had jumped over the wall to my right, shoulders squared and facial expression intent on the man. My family had been sitting outside watching the exchange, and my dad had decided our 3-minute chat was enough. The sentences they were exchanged were brief and evaded my memory. I was too focused on how he had known about Patches. Was he stalking us? Was he just crazy and made a lucky guess? The man turns to leave, but I look in his direction once again before he does. Oh, but looks in my direction before he does. "Have a wonderful day," is the last thing he said. That's the last thing he says to me before he slumbers off towards the playground again. I leave and go back to the house with my dad and tell him about our conversation. He believed the man to be on drugs, which wouldn't surprise me, but to this day I can't shake the strange feeling his presence held, and the fact that he had known about my cat. I turned back and watched him drive off in this rusty white truck, and I never saw him again. I limited visits to the graveyard after that. I think I understand. I think I know why they've tried to infiltrate our. I think I know why the mainframes come after us so quickly. We're not blending in. Not scary enough. Next entry. A ghost that gave me wicked shits. We were in the most haunted town in the state in my state on vacation, and we decided to do a ghost tour. It started off in front of the graveyard, totally normal stuff, you know. As we do the tour, we stop in front of our house where our guide tells us its history and what type of ghosts are spotted in it. It's some lady who died during a cholera. I don't know why I struggled so hard to remember how to say that. A cholera outbreak, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of type of ghosts there. I happen to glance up at the window as the guy talks, and I swear I saw this lady just standing there, and she makes direct eye contact with me. The tour continues, and then we're back at the hotel. I feel it. My tummy begins to rumble in a /neg way, and I barely have time to change into my pajamas before I'm fighting for my life on the toilet. That ghostly bitch gave me some of the worst diarrhea I've ever had. Real? Next entry. The Backpack Shadow Man. Oh, by the way, I should preface that a lot of these are probably like these are ghost stories. So if you're sensitive to like, you know, probably hauntings or how people become ghosts, like murder and stuff, maybe I'll see you in an hour or so. Anyway, brace yourselves. This is a goddamn saga. So the story starts when I was a tiny child, around 6 or so, playing outside in my home's sweet cul-de-sac neighborhood. It was brisk late summer autumn afternoon, and I was just minding my business, I think playing on a scooter on the blacktop. The way my neighborhood is laid out, the dumpsters between each building is in a little shack, and the shack is surrounded by a bunch of tall as hell trees. The dumpster areas are pretty dark and shaded even in the middle of the day, and guess what 6-year-old me sees when I suddenly get a chill up my spine and look over at the darkened dumpster area? A goddamn shadow figure. Just hanging out in the middle of the day. Either it was just my child brain perceiving something average height as massive, or he was actually 7 to 8 feet tall, and just a full-on shadow creature. He had glowy white eyes and a big backpack on that, even with how tall he was, made him slouch. I immediately froze, because what the absolute hell, and just had a fearful staring contest with him for just a few seconds. That is until I almost got hit by a speeding car that was using the cul-de-sac to make a U-turn or some shit. Legit, I was like a foot away from the danger zone, and I had not stopped to look at Backpack. I had not stopped to look at Backpack Man. If I had not stopped to look at Backpack Man, I very well could have been yeeted off this earth at age 6. When I looked back after the car had gone, the Backpack Man was gone, and I forgot about this incident until a few years later. This was like at age 10 now. It was my aunt's house for a barbecue, and I was gathering up some utensils for the table in her backyard. This time it was fully dark in the evening and only 2 lights on the back of the house to shine into the backyard. I was by myself since the adults had just carried a big tarp back inside to put away. Suddenly I got a chill up my spine. I got the weird feeling I was being watched from somewhere. I look up and saw, guess who? The Backpack Man. Just fucking chilling in a tree. He was scrunched up at first, just staring at me before he looked over at an empty alley lot between my aunt's house and the next. I ran to the stairs with the stuff in my hands just before I pissed the hell off dog run out of the alley. I bolted inside and let my family know about the dog, but nothing really happened with it, at least as far as I'm aware. Time skip again to age 18. I was riding a train to the city where my college was with my parents, trying to learn the system to commute between college and home. But being a dumb college kid, stayed up the night before, and I was falling asleep mid-train ride. And at some point, I actually passed out. I had a stupid realistic dream that it only lasted a few minutes, where I was in the same train car, only all alone at first. I looked around and, surprised to no one by now, saw the Backpack Man in the dream. Then I heard him talk. His voice was quiet but serious, like a handful of people angrily whispering something. In the dream, he said, "Move." And right after that, I woke up in my seat. Obviously, not being a stupid horror movie protagonist, I stood up and got out of my seat. Just as I did, the train shook, and as it turned, and a suitcase from another passenger toppled over from the wreck above my seat, and would have bonked me square on my already melting noggin if I didn't move. So yeah, these are my spooky ghost encounters. I know it seems too good to be true, but I swear these times stick out in my childhood memory stores like a sore thumb. Fortunately, ever since the train, I never saw Backpack Man again, Sag. I hope wherever he is, his pack is light and he is chilling in the comfiest and shadiest trees. Wow. Backpack Man with the clutch. Next entry. The ghost who shit its pants. Okay. Back in my second year of high school, senior pranks got really bad. Some seniors got arrested the year before, so it basically stopped all ideas of a prank this year. I had study hall my third period of the day, and during class change, I would normally go to the bathroom. I built a pissing habit during this class change, and when I got to the hall with the bathrooms, the hallway traffic basically came to a stop. Across from the bathrooms was a line of shit spread with two fingers on the wall. Across from the bathrooms was a line of shit spread with two fingers on the wall. Soon enough, teachers had to get us to keep moving so we could get to class. Later that day, not to commit such vile acts, and they would be investigating into who did it. He also said that if he found out the senior class was up to this prank, then he would cancel the class trip. I was an intern for the school's IT department, so the school resource officer had asked us to see if the camera footage had been altered because he would not find any students. He could not find any students. We didn't really know what to look for to see if it was or wasn't altered, so we skimmed through about 8 or 9 hours of camera footage until we found what we were looking for. The camera showed a ball of shit flying from the guy's restroom and landing on the wall. We then watched it get smeared for about 20 minutes. The whole IT department was in tears by the time it was done, but nobody had walked in or out during the whole time. They had ended up closing down the bathrooms on that side of the building, but opened it up a week after because they couldn't find enough evidence to blame it on someone. The whole IT department believes it was a ghost, and we still reminisce on it when we get together for drinks. I just hope the ghost wiped its ass. Crying from laughter, I imagine. Heckerman is hungry. Debating ordering something to eat. Had some really shitty Chinese food the other day, and it really pissed me off. Kind of want like good Chinese food to redeem it. Is that dude on my mic okay? Yeah, he's chilling, bro. I don't think I have the appetite for some dim sum. I just want a meal. I'm getting a chain restaurant. Sorry, anybody who wants. I'm struggling to find good local Chinese food where I'm at, and that's because I'm in the middle of fucking white ass Arkansas. But actually, let me check real quick. You would be surprised though. Like there are some places where like I'm genuinely blown away because the food's actually really good. Because it's clear that like it's like ran by people like culturally from that or aware, you know? Why did I look up Chinese food and Dairy Queen popped up? What the fuck is happening, dude? Absurd. What the fuck does Dairy Queen even have that's like Chinese food?
Freemk Files.
Guys, everybody thank Ether for getting this together really quickly so we could do this today, right before our sponsor. Did I thank you for your sub yet? No, fuck you. Okay, wait. I think I found something better. I haven't really thanked any subs today because I had to quickly start my stream because I got asked to play Demonologist and then they stopped after one round because they had been playing.
Balls.
So true. Balls. There is a lack of Asian food in my area, it seems. Very sad. Actually, no, there's a lot of Thai. Not sure. Thai food isn't that good? Wrong. Thai food's awesome. Big fan. I want Chinese food though to redeem the terrible Chinese food I had the other day. I just don't remember the name of the place and I'm scared of ordering from the same place again. Monka. Damn, this music kind of spooky though.
I'm out here spooking my ghost in.
Okay. That's awesome, bro. Oh, damn. Okay. 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 I don't know yet. I'm so. Oh my god, you know what I actually want? Fuck. Yes. Yes, dude. Ramen. Okay. I don't know what I want. I'm struggling, dude. I'm having a hard time. I want like so much shit right now.
Scary stories, more like scary penis boogotum.
What? What do you mean? Shouldn't be laughing at
Jump
that.
scare.
Ah! Okay. Almost done. Sorry. Fuck.
While Sneak takes his sweet-ass time ordering food, thank you chat for all the submissions.
What the hell?
There were literal hundreds to go through, and me, Baz, Fives, and Sol all helped Ether go through the files.
I'm actually so mad. I just tried to order somewhere and they said delivery is not available. It's like some of the best ramen I've ever had too. I'm actually so pressed about this. Fuck. whatever. I don't even care. I didn't even want it. It's fine. Done. Where were we? I was doing my job. I forgot. Next entry. The haunted TV. The story takes place when I was just a small child, like 5 or 6, and my little sister, who we'll call Amy for the sake of the story, was like 4 or 5. We shared a room and we had a TV in the room that we fell asleep to. The TV broke and we were also poor, so when buying a new one, we went to the Salvation Army to buy one. Amy was obsessed at the start with the small one we found, and we ended up getting it. By the time we set it up, Amy was acting weird, as was I. I was very scared of the TV. When we went to the bed, we would be woken up by knocks and scratches at first, then bruises on our bodies would show up out of nowhere. And Amy was just being weird in general. She would stare at the TV even when it was static. VHS TV. She would scream and cry if we turned it off, like someone was hurting her. The last night we had the TV was the worst. We both went to bed. When we woke up, like always, the knocking and scratching by the The last night we had the TV was the worst that we both had. We went to the bed, and when we woke up, like always, to scratching and knocking on the walls. We noticed handprints and scratches on each other as well. It was more bruises than before. We told our parents, and they put us all in the car as well as the TV. And as we were driving, it was like 3 or 4 a.m. We would see the same homeless man. We would turn a corner. There he was. We got on the highway, and there he was. We got a river to throw the TV in for some reason. I don't know. As soon as we got there, it was like something in Amy snapped. She started screaming and thrashing around in the car as if she was in so much pain. When my parents threw the TV in the water, she was just fine. It was as if nothing happened and everything was normal after that. No more knocking or scratching on the walls, no random bruises and scratches on our bodies. To this day, Amy barely remembers a thing about the TV or what was terrorizing us, and neither do I, really. This is all written off of basic memory from both of us and what our mom has told us. Next entry. An abandoned church and a lost shoe. So my best friend was always into witchy shit, crystals, tarot, ghosts, all that. Another one of my friends decided that to celebrate one of his friends getting their license, that we would go explore an abandoned building. We went to an abandoned church, and there are locks on the front, and while we walked around the building checking for other ways in, it felt like I was being watched. My best friend felt like that too, but no one else really believed in ghosts, so they were just making fun of us. There was only one door, so eventually one of the groups just goes and breaks a window to get inside. We were all inside and looking around. It starts out pretty normal for abandoned buildings. Spray paint on the walls, random shit everywhere, just kind of trashy in general. Eventually, we find some evidence of someone living there, and my best friend suggests we should leave. I agree, but all the others disagree and keep exploring. Someone yells out that there's writing on the bathroom walls they can't decipher, and since my handwriting's shitty, I said I'd go look at it. Everyone else goes to look at the chapel. I figure out that the writing's a whole lot of nothing. So we go to the chapel and see that everyone in the group is chanting for my best friend to get on a chair that's sitting on a raised platform in the chapel. I ask what's going on, and one of them says that the chair was there when they got to the chapel, and because there was nothing else, they wanted the person who was the most in tune with ghosts to sit on the chair and see if it was haunted or something. I said that my best friend shouldn't have to if he didn't want to, but everyone else didn't listen and just kept pushing for him to sit on the chair. Eventually he does, and the feeling that I'm being watched increases tenfold once my best friend steps on the raised platform. Once he sits down, though, that feeling that I'm being watched completely goes away. So at this point, I'm freaked out, and I mentioned that there was a creepy shack in the back, and the only person who wanted to see it that hadn't was my best friend. As me and Bestie were walking out, one of the others gets kind of mad at that nothing happened and goes up to the platform and throws the chair off. The feeling of the eyes immediately come back, and it's almost worse than the last time. Me and Bestie look at each other and we both decide to go and yell at them all for that and put the chair back. Neither of us dare to go up on the platform, but once we put the chair back up, we go back outside and we were talking about the shit that's happening and how everyone else in the group is so stupid and ignorant of how much ghosts can fuck with people. My best friend mentions that they keep seeing a shadowy figure running around. We go and check out the weird little shack that is now the least weird part of the whole thing. Then from the front of the building, we hear there's someone coming, get back in the car. So we start running back to the front, and on the way there, there's a patch of mud, and while running, my shoe gets stuck in the mud, and I just fully eat shit and lose my shoe. Rip. I grab my shoe and run back to the car, and we all get back to the person who's driving's house. A few months later, after the person who shoved over the chair starts complaining that they feel like they're being haunted and they don't know why, they asked my best friend for help, but he never did because he knew it was that thing from the church, and that person brought it on themselves. Damn. Shoe moment. That shoe was a paid actor, bro. Anyway. Next entry. The Devil's Silo. Ooh. I'm a farmer. It was a dark and stormy night. Nah, just kidding. It was just a very dark night. I was at a Thanksgiving family gathering, and it was lively and crisp evening. Dust had long since set, and me and my 30 or more cousins were running around outside an old farm hall we rented like the little heathens we are. Our ages are ranged from 4 to 18. Us kiddos gathered around the silos next to the hall and watched some of the older kids climb the rickety ladder to the top, some 30 feet. Because we're complete idiots. Shortly after, we began to hear odd noises coming from inside the shed attached to the silo. We peered in through the small window on the door into the pitch black room. Using our phones as flashlights, it seemed empty. Sorry. Looking at my phone. The few other kids who had phones were trying to film the debacle noticed that the phone screens had changed to flickering green lines, completely unusable. Probably a result of some magnetic electrical interference in the silos. I don't know. I'm not a nerd. Fair. At this point, we decided, hey, brilliant idea. Let's fucking break into the shed. So we did. It was utterly empty and silent, so we left the tiny dingy space, locking the door behind us. The noises, clangs, bumps, and shuffling resumed. It was around this time that I heard a sudden eruption of horrified screams. I turned to see a fiery red smile etched into the window, flickering and grinning ghoulishly. It looked nothing like a chance reflection, nor a screen or optical illusion. Some kids reportedly heard a deep, menacing laugh as well, but we all know how reliable that is. Some of the younger kids started crying like stinky, poopy babies as the smile flickered back out of existence, leaving only darkness and finally an ominous silence. I was thrilled, not gonna lie. The adrenaline was exhilarating, and I've always been a cryptic little shit. So naturally, I hid in a dark corner outside of the shed, made various grunts and groaning noises at the remaining stragglers. I could feel my hair stand up on end with goosebumps and eyes on the back of my head despite myself, though I was like 12, so at any rate, I suspect some completely normal and not paranormal scheme was at play and that this was a product of compound childish hysteria. Still a funny story, though. Gotta love stupid kids. Anyway, go fuck yourself. Happy Halloweeny. After all the effort I've done to ask my producer and the mod team to make this for me. Next entry. Everything they told you about birds is a lie. So it was my 12th birthday party. It's 5 p.m. I'm chilling. I'm vibing. I'm bouncing on the fucking trampoline. I'm eating cake. And suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I see a lone bird in the sky that for some reason doesn't seem to be moving. I turn to look at it, and it is indeed not moving a fucking muscle, not a fucking inch of movement. You could balance a pin on it, and it would not topple. It is in the middle of the air, still as a fucking rock, and I am befuddled, stupefied, discombobulated even. Discombobulate. Obviously, I'm interested and proceed to keep track of it for the next 15 minutes, during which it does not move at all. After 15 minutes, I go to tell my mom about this freaky bird I'm perceiving, but when she looks in the direction I'm pointing at, the bird is gone! She laughs at me and says something along the lines of kids and their imagination. So I'm obviously furious and go around asking the other kids if they saw the bird, and they say no. Finally, after 10 minutes of trying, I give up and admit defeat. I go back to enjoying my party, but then I look up at the sky again, and there that bird is staying perfectly still midair at the exact same position. No one believes me to this day. Frown. Tiny bonus, I've seen a couple more birds and even airplanes stay still midair as well, but apparently it's only me. Smile. Or sad. Wow. Next entry. The man in the doorway. When I was a little kid, I was alone a lot more than I should have been. One of my parents was sick, and the other would be working hours away doing maintenance work for whatever they were doing at the time. Often I would be playing by myself or with one of my dogs, and I would feel someone watching me, something always staring into the back of my head, but then I would turn around and there would be nothing there. So I would continue playing until I went to bed. Then I would go to bed, and that's when the man would appear. Oftentimes he stood in the doorway. Sometimes it was at the foot of my bed. There was a little divider wall in front of my door that my dad had tried to say was making the shadow of the person. But when he tried to show me how the shadow would look in the doorway, his shadow would never pop up because the light would not bend around to the shadowy corner of entrance of my bedroom. The shadow man would also appear at sleepovers I would have with friends. Some still ask me about the ghost to this day, and mess with electronics in the house, like a TV I had that could only be turned on with the eraser end of a pencil. It got to a point where as I grew older, and I'm not ashamed to say this, I would have my parents sit with me until I fell asleep because of how scared I was. There was a gap for a while where there was no shadow man, and I felt normal. After a long time, I wasn't the only sibling in the house. Me and my siblings have a 9.5-year gap. Everything was great until I was 14. And we were about to move, and my brother comes crying to me because the shadow man was trying to get him. It entirely threw me off guard at first, so I asked him where he saw the man, and sure enough, right in the hallway, exactly where I would see him. Except my brother told me, and this is a very, very little kid at a time, that the man's hands were creeping around the corner of the doorway, right where he would have been standing in the front of my door. We moved shortly after that. We still get some ghost problems here and there, but nothing as terrifying as that for me. The encounter I had with this man was also definitely what started my belief of ghosts. Wow. Next entry. One last visit. Not me. Not Hermione. You. But my dad has a story that is spooky as hell. I used to have a dog that passed when I was younger. She was a strange dog, but very loving, and had peculiar routines that she liked to follow. Anyway, one of such routines was that whenever she laid down, she would spin around in a circle several times and plop down in a tight-knit ball. She got cold very easy, so it kept her warm. Sometimes after she passed, like a few months or so, my parents swear she visited them one last time. They heard the sound of a dog going up the stairs, felt a dog jump onto the bed, do around 5 or 6 spins, and plop itself down on the bed. Both of them woke up in shock and saw nothing. My other dog at the time was apparently being spooned by my dad and made no notice of what happened. What makes this creepy is that both of them felt the same thing at the same time, and swear to this day she visited them one final time that night. Puppy. Next entry. Time loop? Growing up in a rural area meant that my bus ride to school was always long. I was always fine with this because it gave me time to do homework that I had neglected the night before and gave me an opportunity for a quick nap before the day started. This time was weird though. I was the first to get on the bus, and like always, it was being in the middle of winter, meaning it was quite dark out still and very cold. Settling in my seat, I was ready to start my nap. When we pulled into our first stop's driveway, I remember that a popular pop song started playing, a fast beat with repeating lyrics. Pretty sure it was by Maroon 5. The song came to a close, and I realized that the bus hadn't moved from the driveway. I don't have to tell you that this was strange. Sure, bus drivers would wait a little bit of time for a kid to get out, but not long enough for a song to start and finish. Then the song played, the same repeating lyrics and fast beat. I peeked to look at the bus driver. He simply stared out the windshield, no movement. The song ended once more. The bus still sat in the driveway. I got up and started moving around. I was still confused, but was too young to really understand what was happening. The song repeated again, still in the driveway, again, still in the driveway. I remember at some point, the song stopped halfway through and restarted, but other than that, it just kept repeating. Eventually, the bus moved from the driveway. No kid had come from the house, and a cheery radio host made no mention of the repeating song. We arrived at school on time as if nothing happened, and I remember telling my friends of the strange occurrence. They shrugged it off, but I still remember that song. Baby, I'm praying on you tonight. Baby, I'm praying on you tonight. Baby, I'm praying on you tonight. Next entry. My grandparents' farm. My childhood was spent on 60 acres of land in upstate New York. The closest town had maybe 300 people. We didn't have any neighbors for a couple of miles, and the woods around us were great for exploring. As a kid, I didn't have many friends, and I spent a lot of time in the woods alone. Mostly just making up stories about being lost in the woods during the apocalypse, just normal kid stuff. One of my most vivid memories from living there was a time I saw a deer in a tree. Something you have to know about the deer in upstate New York is that they're fucking insane. Those bastards will get into anything, and it wouldn't have been the first time I'd seen a deer at least a couple of branches up into a tree. This time it was different. As this buck was close to 30 feet in the air, and that's not even the most impressive part. This fully grown buck was spiked through the...
Fucking sneak snag!
Do you mind? Just kidding. Thanks for the raid, mid-ounce. A fully grown buck was spiked through the stomach on a branch all the way to the trunk. I could see where a bunch of smaller sticks had been broken off during the carnage and laid bloody on the ground. I noticed that the woods were getting too quiet for comfort, and turned back to run home.
Motherfucking sneak snag!
I'm putting on a show here, and you guys are rating me and sending people my way to entertain. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. I appreciate it. Possibly awesome. What the fuck? Why did Chewbacca just show up, huh? Okay. I noticed that the woods were getting too quiet for comfort. I turned to run back home. No way I was getting eaten by some forest demon. I saw plenty of shit around the farm. Lots of histories on the land. Would we love to share more if you have another event like this. Sneak : DD. DD. Next entry. The Shadow. I remember when I used to visit my grandma's house. Her house always felt odd to me. The reason being, things inside this house would just move. Something you placed in one spot the next day would be gone or in a new place. At first, I thought it was my grandma or grandpa forgetting where they placed things. What made me change my mind was that in the night of a full moon, I shit you not, it was a full moon, and me being like 8 or 9 at the time was terrified. So in typical I'm scared fashion, I'd hide under the covers, but this night I had to go to the bathroom. Unlucky. The bathroom in this house is down the hallway directly from the room I'm in, and the door is wide open. It's not far, but because the hallway is straightforward with no turns, you can see my grandmother's room also, with the door open. After a minute or so, I had said these words myself: I'm brave, it's just the dark, and I was so wrong. I moved the covers and started towards the bathroom. I actually made it to the bathroom, and I was just leaving the bathroom, and I looked towards my grandmother's room. To this day, I have no fucking clue what I saw. Or what this was. A giant-ass creature, shadow thing that was standing in front of the room of the door. Worst of all, looking back, I remember this thing had to be standing there because there's a nightlight at the end of the hall that shines into my grandmother's room in the hallway. This thing was standing in the door frame and no light was passing through it. Its shadowy not passing through its shadowy body. I remember freezing up, and I remember feeling that primal fear. I was so scared I started to cry. And once I was able to move from my initial shock, I ran right to my room, slammed the door, and hid under the covers. One thing I very vividly remember is that wherever that thing was, it didn't come at me. Whoa. Next entry. Stuck in an abandoned army fort. I used to live close to a city that was home to a number of abandoned and old army forts built circa 1914. The interesting thing about this city is that it never saw war. As a result, forts always just had strange vibes to them. They never had soldiers stationed in them, but for some reason they always felt haunted to me. Cut to early redacted, and me and my friend in our urban exploration era decided to go to a fort tucked away from the other tourist trap ones. The fort in question was a common spot for crust punks, to chill out, so we decided to give it a search. We were a little less than 30 minutes away from the civilization with 2 dead phones and a structurally unstable World War I fort. In our teenage hubris, we wanted to go inside. Problem: the main door was sealed shut and welded. We threw some rocks at it to no avail, so we settled for some parkour instead, dropping our bags outside as we find our entrance. Unfortunately, being 5 feet myself, it was more of a challenge to me than my 6-foot-plus friend. He was able to easily scale a ledge with a couple of crimps while I was having a bit more of a struggle. We ended up making a stack of rocks to get up. Only problem is that when I was going to pull myself up on the ledge, the stack gave out under me. I got up, but now getting down was somewhere around a 10-foot drop. We ignore this and climb through the window and make our way down. The entire interior was frozen in ice, icicles on every rafter of the ceiling, the floor, the walls. It was almost an airtight box of black ice in the middle of the bitingly cold winter. -10 Celsius. We were the type of teens to wear shorts in the winter to be tough. Right. The additional issue, the walls weren't tagged. Most walls in the fort were tagged. Wait. The walls weren't tagged. Most walls in this fort were tagged. So we knew the crust punks had gone up and down the outside regularly. Oh. Outside, not inside. Got it. The inside was blank. No tags, no Sharpie drawings, no syringes, no little penis tags, nothing. We hang out for a bit inside. Not yet too worried. We tag the interior, check out all the rooms, slip inside the ice about 15 times. Find some animal bones, collect said animal bones, fill the void of penis graffitis, throw icicles at the ground. We spent 30 minutes in there hanging out, but between the cold and the vibes and more, we decide to finally get out because my friend is getting a bit tired and I'm freezing. So we go for the wall we climbed up before, covered in black ice. We go for another ledge covered in black ice. Crimps to get up to a rafter covered in black ice. We try stacking on one another, but quickly realize neither of us could pull the other up. And even after that, the ledge to get back out is also covered in black ice. We start trying for about 15 minutes to get up the ledges. We stack rubble. We go for jumps, human stacks. Nothing is working out. Our phones are dead. We couldn't call for help. There's no stack outside to indicate we're in here. Additional problem, know how I mentioned we left our bags outside? My friend is a type 1 diabetic, requiring around 5 injections of insulin per day. If I remember right, he had something called fast-acting insulin. I don't know the specifics. I know he takes less now, though. His insulin is outside in the bags. He's due for his injection, so he's freaking out. Further problem, we're freezing. Our fingers are actively getting blue. We're inside a frozen box with the door welded shut and ice over top everything else. So I go back to throwing rocks at the door. He's just on the ground trying to rest up. We keep trying to get out for about an hour until I'm just at the point of screaming and trying to tie our sweaters to stuff to perhaps rope climb our way out. It was at this point we just started talking. I don't tell the specifics of that conversation to anyone. It was one of my most harrowing moments of my life. Lots of promises made. It's another 30 minutes of talking, then we both just go silent. Sweaters on, just trying to conserve warmth. Arms under our armpits and just waiting. It's then that we hear it laughing. I was certain for a solid few seconds it wasn't real, but hoped 2 voices were outside. But nope, 2 voices were outside. And then there was a loud slam on the welded shut door. The sound of rocks hitting the door. I took the opportunity to get up and screamed again. Though with how quiet my buddy was, I was slightly convinced I made it all up and was screaming at nothing. But lo and behold, the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. 2 crusts. What is crusts? Like a type of person, I guess. Screaming back at me. They called the firefighters, and within the hour, we were out. After the most horrifying few hours of my life in an abandoned army base with my best mate, I pretty much vowed to never do urban exploration again. There weren't any ghost encounters or anything like that. The real horror was just how unprepared we were and how horrifying unsafe ice is. Frostbite. We had frostbite, horrible sensation. We were both sick for weeks, and we both fully recovered. So, freaks, that's a story of how me and my mates almost froze in an old abandoned army fort. That's cool, man. Doesn't have to be a ghost story. It just has to be spooky scare. Oh, where are we at? Halfway. Very cool. Oh, there you go. Title: The Woman in White. I used to sleep with my door open as a child. My childhood bed was angled so I could look out of the hallway directly across from where I slept. The story takes place when I was around 5 or 6 years old. It was normally day, but for some reason, I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't remember the time, but I sat up in the bed as if waking up from a nightmare. But little did I know the nightmare just began. When I sat up in bed, my eyes went to the door in the direct line of sight. But it wasn't just an empty hallway when I looked. Standing just beyond the doorframe was a ghostly woman. I remember she was wearing what looked like a wedding dress, but it was torn and ripped and looked burnt in places. She had tears running down her pale face. Or tears. But what got my attention was something or someone smaller holding her right hand. There was a small girl. She was the same ghostly white color as the woman. The little girl, in contrast to the woman, was smiling and excitedly pointing around my room. I remember her voice yelling while pointing to my different stuffed animals and toys. Mommy, mine, mine, mine. The woman never said a word, just stood there and stared. I don't know how long those two were there until they faded away. It felt like both seconds and forever. I remember once they had faded, I could finally move, and I ran to my door and slammed it shut. This very day, I cannot sleep with my bedroom door open. It would later tell my friends that they explained it away as sleep paralysis or a nightmare, but I asked my parents, and neither of them closed my door that night. Also, I had never had sleep paralysis before that event or since that night. Besides, neither of those reasons explain why the woman in white's presence still lingers. Her main spot is near the windows of my parents' bedroom. Whenever I climb the stairs at night, sometimes I swear I would see glimpses of her white dress just standing there in the corner of my eye. Ever since that night, if I was ever alone in my parents' room, no matter if it is day or night, I feel someone watching me. I can't explain it, but I just know it's her. Her gaze feels like daggers sticking into your back, filling with you with overwhelming sense of dread. But you turn around and no one is there. I have since moved, but the most terrifying thought is that the question of did the ghost stay in my childhood home, or will she continue to follow me throughout my life? Oh. My throat's getting dry. Next entry. The Hand. We shall start the spooky tale with some backstory. When I was around 6 years old, my parents divorced, and because of that, my mom, brother, and sister and I moved in with my aunt and my cousin, and we lived there for a couple of years. My sister did competitive dance, so my aunt, mom, and her would be gone almost every weekend, leaving me and my cousin, we shall call her Taylor, with my older brother to babysit us, meaning he would sit in his room and only come out to throw pizza pockets in the oven for dinner. The weather this weekend was spooky. There was a lightning and thunder, but the thing that made me and my 10-year-old cousin scared the most was the lights would flicker and eventually they would turn off completely. My aunt had some weird shit in her house and little things everywhere, and one of them was a very large hand statue. For no reason, might I add, like it didn't hold anything, it just sat in a tall cabinet, whatever. It's none of my business, whatever. Taylor and I were obviously freaked out because of the weather and the lights flickering, but what freaked us out more was that the hand and one time on the light's final flicker before the power went off for the night, the hand moved. And oh, how we screamed. We ran to go past the kitchen, but stopped dead in our tracks as the hand was sitting in the middle of the counter in a new position, and that did it. Taylor and I got knives and dashed upstairs to our room and hid in the closet after what felt like hours, but was realistically probably 10 minutes. We opened the door to see the hand right in front of us on the floor. Taylor slammed the door shut and we proceeded to stay in the closet for the rest of the night. Even slept in there. And the next day, when it was bright, opening the door with shaking hands, we were not greeted with the hand. We went downstairs and found out the hand found the hand on its too tall cabinet, assuming the original position. We questioned my brother about the day, but he told us he snuck out to hang out with friends when the power started flickering. Whether that was a real statement or not, we will never know. Monka. Next entry. Haunted school. For a while, I went to a charter school that used to be a church. The auditorium was the church and the rest of the school was built off of it. My theater class took place in the auditorium. The old offices and rooms were turned into prop and dressing rooms. One day, my brother and I were setting up some stuff for a play during class, and he left something in the prop room. The stairs and hall to the prop room have lights that flicker, and the school has never been able to fix it. At the end of the day, we headed back up the creepy stairs. In the halls with the strange writing. The lights in the room were off when we got there. The first thing we saw was a figure. I ran as soon as I saw it, but my brother says it looks like a giant silhouette with a large head. There have been many... Skibbity toilet? With a large head... there have been many other claimed ghost sightings in the auditorium, plus the lights noises. My school experience was subpar. Skibbity toilet. Next entry. Title. Open your eyes and seek the truth. So I'm going to call myself C for short, but my stories are basically all ghostly or magical encounters I've had growing up. I truly believe in paranormal. I believe that this world is full of magic and wonder that the human eyes can't see. Had multiple encounters. I believe that this is due to magic and coming from a descendant of witches within my family. My first encounter, which still to this day truly opened my eyes and mind. Excuse me. It was during January. The night was cold and I was just coming home from my concert. I had lived up on the hill at one point and lived next door to this very sweet old lady. I hadn't seen her in a few weeks, believing that she was simply resting. As we were driving past this lady's house, I looked outside and saw an angel, not the floating eyes and a million teeth, but a simple angel, white robe, long hair. It stared at me before flying into the air. I didn't find out till later that the old lady had passed away. They were holding a wake for her recently. I was sitting in my dorm room with my roommates and friends. We were all relaxing when one of my friends screamed. I looked up at the window and caught a glimpse of a tall man walking towards my room. My friend's screaming she just saw a man. As someone who practices pagan, we instantly got up and looked around. We found out that it was a spirit who was in pain. And while trying to speak to it, one of my friends got scratches all across their arm. We're okay now. I've seen ghosts. I truly believe in the paranormal and beings walking across this earth. The most terrifying part of all these moments I've had. The minute you realize you can see them, the more active they become. Whoa. Wowee. Next entry. Grim Reaper watched me while I slept. This happened when I was in 7th grade, so I was about 12. One day I came home from school and there was this thing watching me in my room. It freaked me the hell out. It stayed in this one corner of my room right beside my window, just staring back at me. It looked like the Grim Reaper. Is that the Grim Reaper? Sorry. It wore a large black cloak large enough to cover its arms and was shredded at the bottom and kept the hood up. It had no face or legs. It was just floating in the corner watching me. It took me a while to move and put my bag down in the room. I usually put it right where that thing was, but there was no way in hell I was walking up to it. I didn't say anything to this thing and stayed downstairs until it was time for bed. I didn't tell anyone about it and fear that they would send me to a hospital for saying there was a ghost in the room watching me. I laid in bed for a while staring at it before I got too tired to stay awake. I remember saying, "Hey bro, could you not kill me in my sleep, please?" And yes, I actually called it bro. I went to sleep and when I woke up, it was gone and I was relieved to say the least. But when I got home from school, it was back. The same cycle of being there when I got home and being gone when I woke up repeated for about a month before I did something. I went up to it and I was almost immediately filled with a strong sense of dread, like I was going to die the moment if I didn't back off. I stepped away and the feeling left just as quickly. I apologized to it and never did it again. I tried to talk to it a few times over the month, but it never spoke back. A few days later, I told my friend Clover, not her real name, who was into the supernatural and all things creepy. I invited her over. When we got to my place after school, she thought it was pretty cool, but spooky. When she was over, that was the only time this thing had looked away from me, but every other time I saw it, it stared right into my eyes. It was a normal thing to me at this point, and I was just chilling with it. The same routine of me getting home, saying hi to it, and then a few hours later going to bed and trying to get it to talk to me every now and then, and repeated for like 2-ish months. But one night it really scared me. Up until this point, it's just slowly floated up and down in a circle, and I mean very slowly. It took a good 20 minutes for this thing to make a full rotation and never strayed from it. This one night it stopped doing that. It floated over to my bed. This thing floated very slowly, which just added to my terror. I was curled up in a ball in a corner of my bed, so scared I could move or speak. Once it got close enough to my bed, I reached out to grab it. Up until this point, I couldn't tell what features it had. It didn't see a face or legs. I assumed it didn't have arms either, but I was clearly wrong. It never had a face, but I knew it was always staring at me. It grabbed the edge of my bed frame with its clawed hand and pulled itself forward. As it pulled itself towards me, never breaking eye contact, it tilted its head at me almost completely sideways. Oh, it tilted my head at me. I'm assuming they mean their head. It stayed like that for at least half an hour before returning to its corner and floating in a circle again. It took me a while to look away. It took me even longer to fall asleep. When I woke up, it was gone, and I hoped it wouldn't be there after school. It was, and I was still scared of it. The same fear that night before. It stopped showing up after a month, and I couldn't be more relieved at the time. I haven't seen it since. I kind of hope I never will. Holy moly. Holy moly. My food's here and I have to take a little pee-pee piss. We will be right back for more entries. Okay. Where are we at? I needed to see if it's worth like saving my food. 20 of 31.
Stare hello gamers, it's been too long, almost 30 months.
Mango boba latte. It's so fucking good. Whoops. Wow, they're using the fancy cups. You don't have to puncture them. Oh, fuck yeah. I can stay strong. I can wait. Entry. My dead grandpa saved my life. Hello. So when I was around 13, my granddad had unfortunately passed away due to a complication with his heart. After the funeral was over, my mom and I went into his house and started clearing his belongings. After around 10 minutes, I heard a voice from upstairs, clear as day, under the floor. I went upstairs and into my granddad's room, where I heard the voice again, louder this time. My mom and auntie followed me upstairs and we all heard it. It sounded exactly like my granddad, and when we looked under the floor, there was a gas leak that could have killed us. My dead granddad literally saved my life that day, and nobody can explain where the voice came from, as we never heard it again. Whoa. I'm guessing you guys read that one already. Sorry. Next entry. The New Year's Eve incident. Damn, bro. I used to believe this story was just a nightmare, induced by too much sugar for my 7-year-old brain. But in 2007, on New Year's Eve, after the adults had gone outside to set up fireworks, while most of the kids were already asleep or told to stay inside because fireworks are dangerous, LOL, my other cousin and siblings decided, against parental orders, to sneak out of the house and light some firecrackers. My childish ass had passed out hours before this, so I didn't really notice that anybody had left until I came back running inside and holding the front door closed while someone kept banging on it, trying to get inside. Still out of it because I had just woken up, I realized my cousins and siblings were extremely scared and the adults had not gotten back home yet. So I ran to get the keys and locked the door while the others held it closed and the banging continued. The others wouldn't tell me what was outside of the... Nobody would tell me what was outside of the door, shushing me and urging me to go back to bed instead, as I would be told later in my life. Hoping I would just forget about the incident because of my pea-sized child brain. I was barely tall enough to look through the door's spy hole, so all I could make out when I eventually managed to push through my cousins was a tall, dark figure with seemingly no face, pacing silently in front of the door, and then suddenly getting really close to the spy hole when I loudly asked, "Who's out there?" It scared me so much that when I did end up going back to bed and falling asleep, thinking it was a nightmare. A few years ago, I mentioned this story to my sister, writing it off as probably a dream, but she went on to confirm that it did happen and that the freaky dark figure chased them all the way down the block, up to our 4th floor apartment, and did try to get inside, but gave up moments before the adults got back, who claimed to not have seen anyone coming down the stairs. Ooh. Next entry. Randonautica finds spot where mom met a murderer? ? What a title. Do any of you remember when Randonautica was popular? I don't know what that is. What is this? This is an app? Oh, it just gives you random coordinates? Interesting. Oh, it literally says it on here. I'm so fucking stupid. It was an app that apparently would take whatever your intentions were and give you locations you could to travel to where hopefully you'd find something interesting. There were tons of scary or cool stories online about experiences with the app. Anyway, a couple years back, I told my mom about the app. She was always loved supernatural stuff, and we thought we'd give it a try. One of the most notable spots it brought us was a gravel road with empty fenced off pasture fields on both sides of us. Me and my brother couldn't find anything interesting about it. It was just two open fields with nothing in them. My mom, however, looked freaked the fuck out. She then starts to tell us the story that happened to her in her late teens. I think she said that she was 17 or so when this happened. She was in high school. Back then, there weren't as many places to go or fun things to do as there are in my city now. So as a teenager who just wants to chill and smoke weed with their friends without any adults bothering them, they started hanging out on gravel roads in their car, between fields, out in the middle of nowhere, so they wouldn't be bothered. Apparently, one night, they parked at this particular spot, and while they were hanging out, an older man went up to the front driver window and knocked. They did not know this man, and it was late at night, so obviously it was pretty strange hearing some stranger knocking on your window. I don't know if my mom had been at the wheel or not, but she told us that apparently the man had asked them if they had seen any shotgun shells. He apparently lost his shotgun shells and were looking for them. Thoroughly creeped out, and her friends say that they didn't even see any, and the man left shortly afterwards. While this was already a strange interaction, apparently the next few days, the police find a dead body out in the woods or a field. I don't remember which, an area near where her and her friends had been hanging out the night before. The person had been shot in the head with a shotgun. The police ruled it to a suicide. If the person had truly been murdered by this random man knocking on their car window looking for his missing shotgun shells, then she and her friends might have been the only witness that could have tied the man to that supposed suicide. It's just strange that Randonautica, an app specifically made for finding interesting things based on your feelings or intentions, brought us here to the same place she was many years ago, where she might have met a murderer. And if she and her friends said or did the wrong thing, they might have ended up dead too. While that's the most interesting Randonautica location we were brought to, the other two I remember are both strange as well. One was this random nuclear company out in the middle of nowhere, a place where we could not have ever found or gone on our way on our own. The other was to this really old and overgrown area where my great-grandma's family/relatives lived years and years ago. It was too overgrown to drive into, and we didn't take any chances by getting out of the car. I hope that thoroughly spooked you out, and remember getting goosebumps when she told us that story. While nothing relatively weird or spooky ever happened to me, my mom has tons of run-ins with spooky, scary, or just all-around weird, frightening stuff. Damn. Next entry. I almost shit myself in the basement. Such contrasting energy in these, you know. I'm gonna start this off by saying I'm not freaked out by this event anymore, but it genuinely made me shit myself when it happened. I almost genuinely shit myself. Okay, so my Nina, grandma, not her name, we just call her that, on my mom's side is a professional psychic/medium. For like 2 to 4 weeks during summer break, my family, parents, and sisters would drive across the country to go stay with her and visit my mom's side of the family. So yeah, Nina was a professional psychic and does readings and stuff from her house / she has a room where she takes clients to connect with their deceased loved ones or do other stuff. We call that her reading room. I've never actually had anything happen, seen anything in this particular room, but shit is crazy in other parts of the house. Recently, I got to go back to her place and stay with her, with both my sisters and my great-grandma and grandma, who was also staying there. So the basement is like actually really cool and cozy. There's carpet floors, fully furnished, nice lights, you know, not like weird, scary place where you'd think you'd find, or what, when you think of a basement. My sisters and I were sharing the living room area of the basement while Nan slept in the little tiny bedroom area down the hall. So one night on our trip, my sisters were upstairs watching Twilight with my Nina, and I was kind of really tired from all the human interaction, so I just stayed down in the basement to draw and try to go to bed. At some point, I heard something down the hall toward Nan's room, and like I was terrified already because nobody likes Nan. Damn. She has skin like leather, and she wears those Scrooge nightgowns, and she once force-fed me scallops from the fork she was using. So I'm here like, ah, shit, Nan's up and she's going to talk to me. So I look down the hall. It's dark because, you know, it's like 11 p.m., whatever. And there is a head peeking around the fucking corner, but like super high off the ground, almost touching the ceiling. When I tell you I almost shit myself at this point, I'm like, okay, that's weird, but that's scary as fuck. But like I couldn't stop staring because my brain was on silly mode. I told me if I looked away, what I thought was Nan was going to run at me. So I sit there like that, staring at this head that's peeking out from behind the corner into Nan's room for like 5 or 6 minutes because what the fuck? I've seen the visit. I didn't want Nan to come crawling out naked on all fours. Oh. Eventually I like got my phone and started calling my sister, Nut, to come save me because I'm freaked the fuck out. I looked away from it for like maybe 10 seconds to get my sister's contact, but when I looked up, the head was gone. Nut comes down like immediately and turns the lights before she leaves again because she checked the hallway and nothing was there. So I get up and check for myself, poke my head into Nan's room, and she's passed out in the bed while Fox News blasts the TV. She's snoring and shit, so I know she's down for real. I kind of thought I was just being silly. My eyes were funny, but the next day I was talking to my Nina. No one had mentioned it to her. She mentioned that Spoofar, great-grandpa Nina's dad, who recently passed away, likes to hang out in the house and look over everyone. Spoofar. Interesting names. I don't know if this is like actual names or they just made names up, but interesting names. Spoofar was a really good guy, and he loved to do like harmless pranks / spooks when me and my sisters were little because he was just a really silly old man. Anyway, at this point, I still hadn't told my Nina about what I saw, but a few days later, she told me, my sisters and I that she saw Spoofar in the hallway while she was doing laundry. So I had to confirm it with my Nina, but she agreed that it was definitely him. So I guess I saw my grandpa again, great-grandpa. It wasn't as scary as I found out it was because I loved him a lot, but you know, Spoofar pranked me beyond the grave. I almost shit myself. A few other things happened in the house, but that one stood out for me because I actually saw something. Anyway, thanks for that trip. I wholeheartedly believe in spirits and such now. Kind of wholesome. Nina, Nut, and Spoofar. Tag yourself. I'm definitely Nut. Next entry. The ghost of insert retail store. I worked in a shoe department of a popular retail store for 4 years. On my first day, I was warned by a person training me that the store is haunted. I never believed in ghosts, so I didn't think much about it until I started working in the early morning shifts. So much shit happened. One morning, a clothing rack no one was near fell over and caused other racks to fall like dominoes. Another morning, all the ladders in the stock room started shaking. We don't get earthquakes. We eventually got used to picking up signs, hangers, and shoeboxes that went flying across the room. The scariest thing that had happened, though, was when this other girl and I decided to get a head start on putting up the jewelry shipment to help the other older woman who worked at the department. We heard and felt footsteps running up behind us. Suddenly, the glass top of the display case shattered. While trying to explain what had happened to the manager, he wasn't surprised at all, and he said Becky hasn't done something this extreme in a while. Turns out a woman named Rebecca had a heart attack in the store and since then has made it her mission to make the employees live a living hell. Well, even more than it was already working in retail. Fair. It's been a couple years since I worked there, and while I don't miss it, I can't stop thinking about Becky, how awful it must be haunting a retail store. Especially during the holidays, because that shitty Christmas music plays 24/7. Karen Ghost. Where's your manager? Damn, I kind of popped off on that one. Hire me to voice act, guys. Next entry. Where are we at? We got 5 more. My photography teacher told our class this ghost story one day, super casually, kind of out of nowhere. It's stuck with me ever since. It was the 1970s, and my photography teacher and his girlfriend were going camping because both really loved photography and wanted to get some pictures. They were hiking in the middle of nowhere in the woods when a thunderstorm started. They ran to find shelter because they didn't want to be struck by lightning, very reasonable, and came across an abandoned house in a small clearing in the woods. It was dark and cold, but enough to keep them dry and away from the lightning. The storm continued into the evening, so rather than pitching their tents, they decided to just lay down their sleeping bags next to each other in the house and call it a night. That night, both of them had strange dreams. At this point in the story, my teachers assured us that despite the fact that this was in the 70s, they weren't on anything. My teacher said he had dreamed about walking into the bathroom to the left of the stairway in the abandoned house and seeing a girl in clothes from what it looked like the mid to late 1800s, kneeling on the floor, playing with something. She turned to him and said, and they just stared at each other for a bit. And when he tried to ask who she was, she started to wail, which turned into straight up screaming. Before she turned around and started running at my teacher, he woke up from his nightmare before she could catch him. But he noticed his girlfriend had also just woken up shaken as well. When he asked her what was wrong, she had said that she had a nightmare about being in a restored version of the house, and she saw a little girl in the kitchen waiting for her with a knife. She asked the girl what she was doing, then the girl screamed and ran at her, and she also woke up before she got caught. My teacher then relayed what had happened in his dream to her, and his girlfriend turned away from him towards the end of their sleeping bags and turned pale. He looked up at the end of their sleeping bags, and they both saw the ghost of a girl whom they had seen in their dreams staring at them. Both of them screamed at my teacher, quickly grabbing his camera to try to snap a photo of her, and then they both ran off, leaving their sleeping bags behind, but remembering the camera, and sprinted all the way back to their car several miles away in the rain. When they got home, my teacher tried developing his photos. I asked him how they turned out because as a photography student at the time, the fuck am I seeing? Phone. Okay. I got a Facebook email. I haven't used Facebook in a long time. When they got home, my teacher tried developing his photos. I asked him how they turned out because as a photography student at the time, that was my biggest concern since I knew they both made it out okay. You can see the negatives for yourself, he told us. As he took the prints off his photos from the day out of his bag, he scattered them across a table in the classroom, and most of them were super underexposed, to the point where it looked like he had just been taking photos of a black wall the entire time. He told us that he had a light meter with him, and they should have turned out perfect. Then he pulled out the last photo, the one of the ghost, which was super extremely overexposed. For the non-photographers / camera nerds, super unlikely because it was in the middle of the night and there was no source of light anywhere around when the photo was taken. You could barely make out the features of the house, and he was pointing them out to us. As he packed up his photos, he said, "So yeah, that's why I haven't taken you guys into the woods to take photos. Also, when you're on your own, don't go into abandoned houses. We were all too creeped out to respond. I wanted to watch a show with you guys in class today. Does that sound good?" Nobody answered him. He just put on up for us, and then we all sat in silence and watched it until the bell rang. Oh my fucking god. Next entry. Someone may have lived in my attic for years. Oh fuck. I hate that. Allow me to set the stage. It was the winter holidays, and myself and my family were just returning after being out of the house for a few days before we left. We had some family members over, but I was still off put by the two half empty Mountain Dew cans in my room. No one who came in my house had entered my room. None of the visitors drank Mountain Dew, let alone brought it with them. No one within my family drank it. We didn't even keep it in the house. The cans were still cold even in my stuffy childhood bedroom. This put me on edge, listening to every creak that came from an old house, but old houses always creak. With this in mind, I began sleeping easier in the coming months, listening to the old creaks of that house in the wind and the water heater shaking the walls in the middle of the night. The distinct sound above me coming from the attic, just more old house sounds, until there were footsteps. The heavy footfalls of what appeared to be work boots hit the old linoleum floor. There were no cars in the driveway. Surely my father wasn't home. The dogs began barking, and it was at this point that I decided to lock myself in one of the bathrooms and send a text to ensure that I was truly supposed to be alone in the house. I sent a simple, "Are you home right now?" Then my phone rang. It was so loud that I had to answer, and I had wanted it to be quiet, but considering how loud the dog was, talking on the phone wouldn't change much. "Hey, I'm not home right now. What did you need?" "Mom isn't home either?" "No, why?" "There were footsteps in the house. I don't know if they've stopped or not. I think someone is in the house." He sat on the phone the entire time as he drove back. He searched the house top to bottom, found nothing. He told me it must have been nothing. Just like before, it eventually did become nothing. Once, an event. Twice, a coincidence. 3 times, a pattern. Months later, I had been talking on the phone with a friend. I excused myself for a moment to go talk with my mother about something I don't quite remember now. Either way, it isn't important. I returned a few minutes later. My friend says something to this day freaks me out. "I didn't know you had family over. Was that your aunt?" "I didn't have any family over. Only me and my mother were in the house, and I told him as much." "What do you mean? I just had a conversation with someone that lasted like 4 minutes." I've been telling my friends about all the strange happenings in that as they occurred, the cans, the footsteps, now this. We immediately started to see if I could get the police involved. Unfortunately, without any video evidence, there was no point. I debated for weeks going up to the attic, the only place that never been checked this entire time. I would walk past it every night on my way to my room, and the sight of that thing filled me with dread. I never did check the attic, but it always felt like someone was watching me. I no longer live in my childhood home. It has been years since I found those cans in my room, but the feeling of being watched is so ingrained into me this day that I cannot seem to shake it. Oh. Hate that. Next enteree. This is the third last one, so I'm assuming these last three are bangers. Wholesome ghost encounter. This happened around when I was about 12 or 13, and of course, then I was up at ungodly hours. This was around Christmas time, no school, so staying up wasn't much of an issue. This particular night, my mom woke up at 4 a.m. to make my dad his breakfast and lunch so he could take it off to work. He works in construction. Of course, seeing me up before the crack ass of dawn, and didn't make her happy, but she just let me stay up anyway. She starts preparing food in the kitchen, so I'm just sitting there in the dining room table talking to her. It's important to note that the kitchen and living room are right next to each other. We were just chilling, and the Christmas tree we put up in the corner of the living room out of nowhere started shaking. I freeze at the ornaments rattling and the sound of the plastic tree branches brushing against each other. My mom suddenly shouts, "Kaida?" And I see a small black and white figure dart from under the tree to the hallway that leads to our bedroom. The Christmas tree is no longer shaking. I was confused for a moment, but remembered Kaida was my first cat I had that unfortunately was no longer with us. Whenever we put up the Christmas tree, she loved climbing it. We also had to scold her to prevent the tree from tumbling down. We learned the hard way. The ornaments went everywhere. And she would dart to one of our rooms. This happened a couple occasions after that. It's nice to know that even as a ghost, she was still up there, up to her menacing behavior. Meow. Next entry. The demon in my parking lot. When the truck parks sideways. I've always been a supernaturally inclined person. I don't necessarily believe in things like the Loch Ness Monster or Mothman, but ghosts, I definitely believe in those. In fact, I believe I have seen ghosts, but that's only kind of related to the story. The point is, I believe in a lot of spooky shit, but I did not believe in demons, not as much as I do now until very recently. Last year, I moved into a new apartment complex. It had been a pretty ample-sized parking lot to accommodate for the amount of residents, but it was very poorly lit and wound around all of the apartment buildings. I always felt uncomfortable in the parking lot at first. I thought this was solely because of the poor lighting at night. Any poorly lit parking lot at night is not fun to be in alone. But I kept seeing things out of the corner of my eyes that looked like animals. Something emaciated. I felt like there was something watching me, following me just behind my back to my apartment. There was this one corner of the lot with a varying number of shopping carts on any given day, and looking at that corner made me feel hunted. But at the same time, I found myself gravitating towards the corner, wanting to go over there. I always resisted that urge, but it confused me. Why did I feel so compelled to wander over there when I looked that way? One night, things took a sharp turn from weird to terrifying. My friend had wanted to come over to watch some movies. When we were driving through the parking lot, she abruptly stopped our conversation, saying, "Hey, was that a wolf over there? It looks kind of sick." Dread immediately wormed my way into my stomach. We had lived in the area near a forest and there were some trees, but I had never seen a wolf, especially not in the area. The only thing I had seen that looked remotely like that was the thing that I had caught flashes of in my peripheral vision. Mostly I had caught a snout, a fleshy long limb, but thought that maybe I was being silly and letting my imagination get to me. My friend, seeing what she described as a sick-looking wolf, though, was something else. I asked her what she was talking about, and that bad feeling I had got much, much worse, and she said that she meant the corner with the shopping carts. She continued on by saying that the wolf looked really injured and that we should go over and help it. I said that we should under no circumstances approach a wild animal, especially a wolf, but she was insistent. It was like she was possessed. I had to take her hand and pull her towards the apartment instead of that corner. Once we were inside, it was like she was back to normal and didn't know what would happen. We discussed it with my sibling, who said that they had also seen something similar in the parking lot, that sometimes it looked more humanoid and that we should all agree to avoid and ignore it. We tried our best from then on. I saw it more clearly and more often. Sometimes the corner would have 3 shopping carts and the next minute it would have none. Sometimes I would not go in the parking lot alone. I think it got mad that we knew it was there and we were ignoring it. We lived there for about a year, but when we were loading up our car and moving away, it decided to play one last trick. I was heading to the parking lot to load some boxes alone when I noticed that the shadow under our car did not look correct. The shadow elongated to form limbs, gnarled hands that gripped the back bumper of the car. There was a face too, upside down, horned and smiling at me with piercing white dots for eyes. Needless to say, I saw that and turned back around towards the apartment to wait for my sibling. Until that shadow incident, we all theorized it might have been a different sort of creature. Pointy horns are kind of a big glowing sign that it says this is a demon. So I certify that I am not making this up. You do not have to believe me because I know how wild it sounds, but I saw it, I experienced it, I believe it. Wow. Next entry. Last entry, I believe, too. No? Second last. Hello? Oh, I have to enter, my bad. My first possession scare. Give me a lurker check, chat. Who's still here? Give me some activity for the last two entries, dude. My mod team worked hard. This isn't my only possession story, but it is my first and it's worth telling. When I was a youngster around 14 to 15, I was in a professional competitive choir. One summer we traveled to Spain for a competition and tour, and the lodging arranged for us during the competition. Part of our trip was an old monastery that had been refurbished into a hostel, hotel, wellness center kind of deal. The monastery was creepy by itself, but the way my choir chose to organize us made things worse for my group. The older kids got the fully renovated rooms on the upper floors, while the staff in the younger groups got rooms on the second floor. We were compressed into one hallway of rooms, with each room containing 4 to 6 bunk beds, 8 to 12 girls per room. No air conditioning or ventilation system besides the door and the window that led out to a communal balcony/patio area. Toilets with a pull cord to flush, one functional shower for an entire hallway, 2 electrical outlets, and everyone had to share. Worst of all was the sink in my room. Specifically, instead of water, a small swarm of brownish red ants emerged from the faucet if you turned the tap. Ugh. Over the first 2 days in the monastery, I managed to catch sore throat and a mild cough. Not good for singing. I had been planning to take things chill until competition rounds. Unfortunately, I was a teenager surrounded by teenagers in a creepy place. By some turn of truth or dare bullshit, I was challenged to retrieve someone's flip-flop from a long hallway we weren't supposed to go into. I wasn't a little bitch, so I did it. I'm generally a skeptic, so the task didn't bother me, but when I came back successful, someone asked if I had turned on my phone flashlight to find the shoe, which I had not. Creeps ensue. I decided to call it a night before I get into trouble and knock out. I wake up in the middle of the night standing in the middle of the room with one of my roommates shaking my shoulders. The entirety of this memory is really hazy, but I remember her guiding me back to bed and telling me to sleep, and I don't remember saying anything at all. The next morning, I wake up with no cough or sore throat, and my roommates telling me I had been crying in my sleep. I asked what had happened that night before, and they told me I had been talking mostly nonsense in my sleep. But I had stood up, started walking, stopped, and turned right back around once I reached the threshold of the door. There's a short video that showed me, which I cannot share, of me lying on my back, arms to the side, saying, "Let me rest," 4 or 5 times before finally turning over and settling. Ooh. Wow. I will say I come from a family of sleepwalkers and sleep talkers, so it could be a coincidence, but there also was a nun at the monastery who had been assaulted, had prayed for protection until she was somewhere safe, survived until she reached the chapel, said one last prayer asking for a peaceful passing, and succumbed to her wounds. So take that whatever way you want.
Back Ogion, as is back all
wherever this nun's soul is, I hope it's resting now.
Love the Freak Files plus Crime Time.
Last entry. My grandmother's toilet. Let's get something straight. Some things are real and some things aren't. It's all up to your interpretation of the world in my eyes. I don't believe in ghosts. The concept is a scam. Everyone who claims otherwise is lying and you're falling for it like a fool. Again, though, your interpretation matters most. What I do believe in, however, is reincarnation. How about we make a long story short? Words got powers, bro. Manifestation is quick and easy and goddamn real. Now, I've thought my dad was just being petty, you know, some classic mother-in-law versus daughter-husband drama, right? I don't think my old man had any truth behind his words or manifestation intended when he called my grandmother a piece of shit. But now she's been reincarnated into my damn toilet. If anything, I thought she would have turned into a bluebird. She loved those little stupid avians. Had a whole faux collection of them. Girl had little critters embroidered on almost every piece of fabric she owned. Probably would have been a bluebird tattoo on her chest if the concept didn't go against her Christianity. Alas, turns out the universe goes by your personality and behavior and morals, not your interests. She was always a little mean, never baked me cookies, always made fun of my bangs, called me my teeth baby yellow. She was cruel to my father, yeah, but again, I thought it was just classic petty activities. I honestly don't think anything she said or did warranted her being reincarnated into a toilet, but here we are. Little flashback, bam. Check your calendar, it's 2016. Oh no. My grandma violently drops dead. Speed forward, bam. Check your calendar, it's 2022. That's what, 5 years later? It's 6. Plenty of time. She's passed. It's no longer disrespectful if I move into her bedroom. It's not like I did it immediately. I waited. I'm patient. Do you hear me, universe? I'm a good person. Reincarnate me into something good. Just cut me some slack. My room was tiny and the carpet was littered with stains from dog piss. My grandma's room, big carpet littered with stains from cat piss. Obviously the preferable living situation. Anyway, things are going just fantastically, and it's a little awkward sleeping in her bed considering she, well, died violently in her sleep, but I just flipped over the mattress, so I slept on the springy side. This is a great one to end on. Guess what? It's time to check your calendar again. Bam! I've been in the room for a week, and it's quite an amazing change of scenery. I'm on one of the completely other sides of the house. The windows offer me a bleak view of my neighborhood's backyard. The walls are painted a different bland color to zone out at. The new room finally provides me with a reliable internet connection. The years-old fading stench of cat piss is now new on my nostrils, and I'm getting used to it. You know what I can't get used to? That goddamn toilet. It's 3 a.m. in the fucking morning, the devil's hour. I'm trying to catch some Z's, cozied up in my bed of blankets and Hulk plush. Is this who I think it is? God damn it. I'm asked on toilet and everything. What do I hear? The cursed flush of my grandmother's toilet. Who's up pissing at 3 a.m.? Not me, man. Besides, nobody flushes at 3 a.m. I think she's mad at me. Very next day, I'm sitting in a Zoom call listening to some stupid English teacher drone on and on about a lesson, sidetracked all over the place and talking about everything but what I need to know. I finally give in and unmute to ask a question. I open my lips. What is the class here? My goddamn grandmother's toilet flushing for no reason. He definitely has something against me. I'm random queuing in some terrible FPS game. It's a Roblox ripoff of a significantly worse FPS game. Minus the baby raging and cursing, I line up my shot across the map, waiting for my dumbass child I'm playing against to round the corner so I can snipe him. I hold my breath, the toilet flushes. I throw my mouse with a gasp, and I'm dead in a blink. What did I do to deserve this? Whatever. Look at your calendar. Bam! It's 2023. Guess what? The toilet's still randomly flushing. Pissing sends physical shivers down my spine. I get the heebie-jeebies every time I take a shit. I think my grandma's toilet is mad because I stole her room. That's my best guess. Listen, lady, I'm sorry, but your room is closer to the router, and I'm a gamer. You gotta get over it. How do I go about this situation? Should I buy an outhouse? Should I shit in the neighbor's lawn? Yes. What's the average lifespan of a toilet? Do I want it out? Am I supposed to call a repairman? What do I tell the repairman when he insists nothing is wrong? Is it ethically irresponsible to sell a toilet on eBay if you're 99% certain your deceased grandmother reincarnated into it? Would anyone even buy the toilet if I put it on the listing description? Would I even include that? Do people even sell toilets on eBay? Is this against eBay terms of service? Man, I gotta piss. Okay, fives. Second, the Hulk plush enters the narrative. It could have been. That could have been anybody, really. Everybody's got Hulk plushies, especially like a lot of them, especially like 20, like 20 plus of them. Yeah, everyone. Anyway, good freak files, guys.